Hi everyone, and thanks for joining our webinar this afternoon, How to Evolve Content Marketing Strategy for an ABM World. I'm Kate from Integrate, and with me I have three other wonderful presenters, Charlie from Engagio, Hana from Uberflip, and Cassandra from Influitive. Thanks to all the presenters for joining us, and let's go ahead and get started. So a couple quick housekeeping notes. We will send out the recording following the webinar, and most people have used GoToWebinar before, but if not, there's a question pane in your master GoToWebinar control panel. Feel free to use that to submit questions. We will address them in the Q&A portion at the end of the webinar. And finally, if you are on Twitter, the hashtag ABM content can be used to engage with us and our company handles throughout the webinar and then also following the webinar. So diving right in, why are we here? ABM has become a must-have strategy for B2B organizations looking to engage the accounts with the best potential. So in order for ABM's promise of this efficiency and this effectiveness to pay off, marketers have to be able to reach and engage decision makers at target accounts, not just accounts. And we know, of course, content is critical to reaching those decision makers, but it can't be the same content that you use in your broad thought leadership and demand marketing efforts. That just won't deliver on your ABM agenda. We really have to get more personal, but in a way that adds value for the prospect. And at the same time, we can't get too personal too fast, as demonstrated in this cartoon. We risk being creepy, or we simply missing a critical educational component. So a couple more examples of what ABM content is not. Here's some bad personalization that I pulled from my inbox last week. No, Kathy is not a fake name that I use when I'm reluctantly submitting a form. I have no idea where they got that from. Here's another one from last week. The whiz marketer figured out how to add our company name into the email, but it's still the same crappy email going to everyone. What gives that away? There's no way you personalize me a list of 20,000 agencies to choose from. So bottom line, if personalization doesn't add value for the viewer, it's not really worth it. Last one. Look, even we messed up. We sent an existing priority target customer an email encouraging them to learn more about us. He, of course, was kind enough to make us aware of our mistake. So now all of these examples that I just showed were emails because that's as far as a lot of companies go when it comes to personalizing content. Now, luckily, we have a handful of companies here today, and the future presenters are going to go over, they've gone a lot further and done a lot more exciting stuff. So making content for ABM means much more than just inserting a company name into a batch and blast email. It's a time for an evolution of that strategy and balancing personalization with scale and without stretching our content creators too thin. So our agenda for today, Charlie will lead off with what's different about content in the ABM world. Then Hana will take us through how to scale and manage the ABM content process. And then Cassandra, our practitioner, will dive into real examples of what's working for her at Influitive, followed by a little bit more tips from Charlie on measuring the impact of ABM content. So before we dive into Charlie's section, I want to launch a quick poll here that will help our presenters gauge the audience and sort of steer their content. So there should be a poll popping up on your screen right now. Go ahead and fill out how or what applies to you here. And I'm starting to see the results come in, and wow, it looks like most people are doing a blend of ABM and other demand efforts, which is what we're hearing from a lot of our customers too. They're blending the ABM strategy with just the general demand gen efforts in order to keep the pipeline full, supplement the pipeline around those ABM efforts. So great. I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and put the results up on the screen here for everyone to see. And with that, we will go ahead and move into Charlie's section.
All right, thank you, Kate.
There you go.
So 88% of folks are using ABM and demand gen strategies. And Engagio internally, we are no different. We are part of the 88%. Now, obviously we were founded by John Miller, the former founder of Marketo. So he has his, kind of thoughts in the space, one of the original ABM folks. And today I'll be sharing some examples on how we do ABM internally, as well as some other examples that we've seen out there that have worked well. So, I want to first talk about what's different about content in the ABM world. But before I do that, I wanted to kind of show this graphic. Let me see if I can advance the slide here. This graphic is the account-based marketing search trends from Google in the last 3.5 years. So as you can see, ABM has not only grown steadily, it's got a nice little hockey stick at the end there as well. And it's continuing to be the hottest thing, in terms of marketing that B2B marketers are thinking of. And so Engagio was actually founded on Pi Day of 31415. And while we can't take all the credit, there's definitely, we think we've contributed to some of the trends in the space. So demand gen and ABM are really in the same family. The difference is that demand gen is shallow and wide, and ABM is narrow and deep. So a quick story about the billboard on the left. I go to Tahoe quite often. It's a lake in Nevada that's about a 4-hour drive. Great lake. And around the lake there was this gas station that had the same 3 prices for different tiers of gas. Now this is really interesting strategy. I don't know if they had too much of the cold beer, or if they just ran out of numbers other than 2s and 9s, but they were saying the same thing to everyone. And my point I'm trying to make here is, if you say the same thing to everyone, it really only resonates. Like, only the people that are getting premium gas are going to buy this, because if you're doing the regular gas, you probably think you can get a better deal elsewhere. So the point is to not say the same thing to everyone. And ABM, because of its narrow focus into a select group of accounts, like on the example on the right here, this is a real-life email to our CEO, John, that was really, really good. This individual clearly did his research and really personalized the entire, in this example, email to get John's attention. The typical exec gets hundreds of emails a day, and most of them are from marketing or sales vendors trying to pitch them, and they might respond to 1 or 2 of them. So, like, what are you going to say to your prospects at your key accounts that is going to resonate with them? Here's another example of this is a campaign I ran at a previous company called Big Panda. We were selling to IT. Basically, we mailed this offer to a select group of target accounts. We did some tests, and we found that the free trial, if someone did a free trial, they were very likely to become an opportunity and convert into a customer. So we sent this to our target accounts. This is obviously a expensive offer, but we thought we could convert them. And on the landing page, we customized the landing page with not only their company name, but also what tools we knew that they were using in their back end. And this little subtle change resulted in a huge uplift in terms of the landing page. So test for yourself. Always have a control group and have ABM kind of personalized content, but you too can measure the big lift when you customize landing pages and content such as this. So back to email really quickly. Marketing and sales should work together in terms of targeting the right accounts, right? It doesn't end with marketing. Once they're a marketing qualified account, you hand it off to your SDR team, but the marketing support continues. But with just 2 robo-spam sequences, you can terminate up to 1/3 of your target accounts. And what do I mean by that? So, your SDRs, like, their job is to follow up with the leads that, the leads and accounts that you've deemed to be hot. But if they follow up in a manner that's automated and spammy, such as, the example that Kate demonstrated earlier, even if you have the best product in the world, your prospects at your target accounts might not engage because, the bar gets higher and higher in terms of what people respond to and what messaging resonates. So make sure that, to complement your ABM, you also have to have really high quality sales follow-up as well. And internally we like to call that account-based sales development. And target accounts are precious. So, so treat them as such. Now, internally, we like to break our ABM in terms of 3 different accounts, 3 different tiers of accounts. So there's a classic tier 1, and these are a handful of accounts. And then there's tier 2 in the hundreds of accounts, and then there's tier 3, which is more of a hybrid / demand gen model where you do your basic industry segmentation. The difference to these accounts is really how personalized you get with your data, and the data really drives the tactics. So for your tier 1 accounts, you're running bespoke campaigns. For our target accounts, we don't send any kind of marketing automation email because we truly believe every single touch point needs to be customized. But for our tier 1 accounts, they get the best of the best in terms of the content. So we'll do 1-to account webinars. We'll do accounts just for Cisco or just for another one of our target accounts. And we'll do customized ebooks and white papers. A lot of times, if you're doing kind of really hard sells, such as IT or a technical sell, that your product, they want to know that their product, like how their product works with your product and how it's going to integrate into their stack. So we found technical content for a specific set of products that your target account is using is really helpful kind of down the funnel. At the top of the funnel, we've also found that handcrafted content in direct mail goes a long way. It really gets their attention. And internally, we're actually about to launch one. Some of you guys in the audience may receive this, but we're going to launch a ABM campaign where it's going to include a postcard and it's going to include some nice swag, as well as some other things in the package to our 6 key personas that our main champion is going to hand to them. Some other content ideas. So I talked about the white paper around account-specific tool sets. We've also found the custom ROI calculator to be a pretty valuable quiver to shoot out. And a lot of times, you have to help your champion sell the product internally. So you kind of have to arm them with the right resources and go to their boss and say, hey, look, this is why I think we should buy this tool, right? The perceived lift is this, in efficiency, or if you're selling to marketing, it's this lift. And this lift is worth X amount of dollars. So you really have to kind of plug in their own inputs and give them something that they can, sell the product internally. So custom ROI calculators are really helpful. And we've also found custom quotes from existing customers to be helpful. Like if you can have one of your existing customers tee up a custom quote to a prospect that you're selling to, that kind of cuts out the middleman or the middlewoman, if you will, in terms of the reference call. You can just route those quotes to the people and save everyone some time, but still get the same value there. And finally, one-to-one videos work really well. I got this video the other day from an AE at Vidyard, and it was very relevant. It was, the messaging was on point, and quite frankly, it was pretty entertaining. So these are just some ABM content ideas that we've seen to work pretty well. And finally, this is our account-based everything market map. So it really starts what's different about the ABM, what's different about ABM and ABSD is really the data that goes inside of it. So the foundation is critical, because if you don't have data about your target accounts, if you haven't researched them, their org charts, what their priorities are, what other tools that they're using, you can't have an intelligent conversation with them. You're going to spend that first valuable call qualifying them and understanding that. But if you already come to that first call prepared with the who and the what, then the interaction becomes much more straightforward. And then you'll need your infrastructure and the orchestration. So you'll see Engagio and Integrate are both in the orchestration category, but Integrate is we're very different in the orchestration category. So Integrate helps kind of curate all that data and validate and make sure all the data is straight, and then they'll help you optimize your demand gen and ABM campaigns. Whereas Engagio focuses is more of a orchestration tool for your sales development team to coordinate intricate plays to get engagement out of your target accounts. So we call it orchestration, but they're two very different things. And you'll hear from me later on how to measure the metrics, but right now off to Hana Abaza from Uberflip.
Thanks, Charlie. Really quick before we go on to Hannah's section, I'm going to launch another quick poll asking what your biggest challenges are with ABM content. So this poll should be up on your screen now. The thing with this one is you can select as many here as apply to you. So go ahead, and if multiple of them apply to you, check those. If it's only one, that's cool too. And we'll start to see these results come in. I know there's kind of a lot to read here, so we'll let this one sit for another minute. But it looks like a lot of people seem to be struggling with balancing the personalization with scale, which that's a little bit of a relief for us, because that's what we're going to talk about next. But I think it's a pretty common and one of the very obvious challenges. The rest of things we've sort of started to solve for, but content's not quite keeping up. So, all right, thank you everyone for filling these out. I'm going to go ahead and close it now so everyone can see the results. And like I said, there's the results. Yeah, the balancing personalization with scale is really one of the key challenges. So Hannah, I'm going to hide the poll and hand you over control so you can let us know what you guys are doing in terms of scaling the, oops, I'm not sure I gave you presenter quite yet. Did you get it?
Awesome. Yep, looks like I've got it now. Okay, cool. So thanks for that, Kate. Charlie, I think, touched on a lot of really great points. So how do we expand upon that, and how do we actually think about implementing ABM at scale, and how do we think of actually working it into our existing marketing strategies? Because, as we saw in the first poll, over 80% of us are doing a blend of demand gen and ABM, and I would argue for the vast majority of companies that's the right call. But it gets a little bit tricky in terms of how do you actually work it into your workflows as a marketing team, and how do you actually figure out how to do this stuff? So first, let's step back and set some context that most of us think of. And when most of us think of content, we think of sort of a three-phase process. We create the content, we distribute it, measure the results, and then, all goes well. That helps you iterate and create better content next time. The only thing that changes with this process, if you're looking at it from the lens of ABM, is the type of content you're creating, and also the distribution methods with which you're actually putting it out there. It's much more one-to-one, it's much more email-based, and then of course the level of metrics and the type of metrics that you're going to measure is different. But the reality is it's not just about the three-phase process. The reality is it's really important to start to think about, okay, how do we really leverage content? So we are really looking at it in terms of a four-phase process. So what we often forget as marketers is, yes, we want to create the content, but it's not just about the content, particularly when you're talking about personalization and account-based marketing and really making something relevant. It's also about the content experience and thinking about managing the content experience and personalizing it and making that relevant, making that whole package much more relevant can actually be a really effective way of really introducing some personalization to content that might not be that personalized to begin with. And of course, distribution and insights are still there as well. So what does this look like now? Well, when we take a look at content in most organizations leverage content right really in this pink section. And to be honest with you, most people really leverage it only for something like a resource center or potentially a blog. But the most successful organizations that are really leveraging content to do things like build pipeline and accelerate sales and actually grow revenue are leveraging content across the entire revenue engine, which is really this entire thing. So, how do you take content beyond just marketing? Well, account-based marketing is really one of those areas where it crosses over into sales. How do you leverage content for prospecting and account-based selling? How do you use it for pipeline generation? And even beyond that, I would argue that if you're taking an account-based approach, then you need to start to think about how you can leverage that even in something like customer success. And I think John Miller says this actually a lot. It's not just account-based marketing, it's account-based everything, and I wholeheartedly buy into that because it needs to be a much more strategic impetus for the company to pull through. So how do you prioritize this stuff for your content team? Well, Charlie made a really good point around tiering your companies. We look at it in the same way at Uberflip, where sort of there's a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Tier 1 is really sort of those very strategic accounts that your marketing, sales, executive team, even customer success team have aligned around. Tier 2 is potentially a little bit less strategic, still important, but maybe not worth like the really personalized content that Charlie was speaking about earlier. And then tier 3 is a little bit broader, and tier 3 is where you can start to get into some more audience segmentation as opposed to specific account-based marketing. Now, my dream is for all marketing to be one-to-one. I would love it if, whether you're B2B, B2C, whatever it might be, if I could do one-to-one marketing for everything, I would do that. But that's obviously not realistic. And the reality is you can't do everything, right? The best kind of marketing, I think, is highly relevant and highly personalized. But when we look at how and why we want to prioritize our team's time, we need to start to step back and we need to be a little bit more realistic about it. So when we look at how we create content, obviously tier 1 usually has the biggest payoff. So that's going to be where you're going to create highly customized content for those strategic accounts. Now, then you can start to think about, okay, how do we actually think about customizing the experiences for the rest of the groups? How do we think about customizing the overall experience for maybe those secondary accounts, maybe those broader audience segments that don't necessarily need really personalized content, but they do need better context for the content that they're reading. So there's a really big difference there. And I think you guys will see in Cassandra's section that's coming up next really great examples of really well done account-based marketing that are really focused at the sort of tier 1 level. But we also need to start to put some thought into how we can reach a balance for tier 2 and tier 3. So this needs to happen working cross-functionally with your teams, right? I think, Charlie alluded this earlier, I think the rest of the speakers will as well, marketing can't do ABM in a silo. Actually, that's probably one of the few things marketing can't do in a silo, right? You can't just randomly decide to go do ABM. You have to do it in conjunction with your sales, and I would argue with your customer success team as well. Customer success, I think, is often overlooked, but this could potentially be the heart of your growth engine. So talking to your customers around getting more, or customer success team rather, around getting more insight into what makes those accounts tick, what's the most important thing around growing and expanding into those accounts even more, right? And content, I think, plays a huge role in that. So one of the things that I love to do when we're looking at structuring how we're going to approach content marketing is really go back to the idea of customer development for content. This is something I talk about a lot because I think as content marketers, we have to actually start thinking more like product marketers, right? We need to connect with the customer more often, and in this case, we need to connect with the account more often and the people within that account. So there's really a few ways you can do this. I really like talking to sort of people, both external people and internal teams, right? And really it's around top of the funnel content, middle of the funnel content, bottom of the funnel content. And you can actually switch that up to be tier 3, tier 2, and tier 1 content where you really want to start to figure out, okay, what kind of content do my really strategic accounts want? What are they struggling with? What's important to that company right now? What's important to that account right now? To more broadly around those tier 3s where it's really more around audience segmentation. Maybe you're segmenting based on a specific industry or a specific use case or something along those lines. So here's really how we break it up, external and internal, and here are the questions we ask. And if you're talking to external people, it's really your followers, your fans, your customers, the specific leads within that account, because let's not lose focus of the fact that although we're looking at it on an account basis, there's still specific people we have to talk to on the other end. There's human beings that we need to start to converse with. And then, of course, as you start to get into the more strategic tiers, then it's around talking to those specific customers. And again, internal teams, I cannot stress enough how important it is to talk to sales and customer success. Questions like, what are the top non-product related questions you hear about from people that you talk to? That's going to be fodder for content. Questions like, what are the biggest pain points for those specific accounts? And questions around what the biggest objections are. This is content marketing 101, but for some reason, a lot of us content marketers don't actually do our customer development, our account development to figure out what they actually want. What we usually do is we get into a room with a whiteboard and we throw up a whole bunch of content ideas, and then we kind of sit back and decide which one is going to work. But you need to really invest some time up front in order to have that bigger ROI moving. So when we look at this 4-phase process that I talked about around the key factors for content and ABM, it's around prioritizing the creation for the highest impact accounts. So for us, again, it's those really strategic accounts, but then it's also better segmenting the rest of those accounts so that we can get more specific around creating good experiences for them. Again, customize the experience for those segments. And distribution and insights, I know Charlie's going to speak about those a little bit later, so I'll let him do that, but those are also incredibly important around really being focused and targeted. So a couple quick examples before I pass things off. So EverString actually does a great job at this, and I wanted to highlight them. Caveat, they are Uberflip customers, so take that with a grain of salt. But beyond the fact that they're using Uberflip for this, whether you use Uberflip or whether you use something else, I want you to take away the concept and the theory here. So they actually create these event hubs for specific accounts that they're targeting, or sorry, not event hubs, content hubs. I'm getting ahead of myself. For specific accounts that they're targeting, and this is actually one of their content hubs for an account that they're targeting. It's got a ton of really great content. Some of it is highly customized. Some of it isn't necessarily customized content, but it's content that's highly relevant for that account, right? So you need to start to craft these experiences in a way that makes sense so that you can scale it, but also is really relevant to the person that you're doing. And then they've actually enabled their sales team to take this content and embed it in some of their outreach. So really, really solid execution here in terms of EverString's part. And I have to say, our team also does it as well, and I need to give a shout out to them. Now, Jason Hoffman, you see this email, embeds content streams within it. And again, if you don't use Uberflip, that's not the point. I don't want you to have that as the takeaway. I want you to understand that it's the concept, it's the process. And Jason's actually not on our sales team. Jason is actually on our customer success team. So the interesting thing is this account level customization and targeting works really well for customer success and actually lays the foundation for further expansion into that account, for increased revenue into that account. So don't just think of it in terms of marketing and sales. This is an example of an account-specific stream for one of our customers. And going beyond that, we see people creating this type of thing all of the time. This is actually a company called Lean Data who started to personalize content experiences for specific accounts, and they saw an 8x increase in pipeline after creating much more targeted experiences. Yes, the volume of visits to that specific content stream was less, but it was way more targeted, way more relevant to them. So hopefully that gives you guys a good view of how you can start to think of the frameworks around content for ABM. And I'm going to pass it back off to Kate and Cassandra because I know there are some pretty kick-ass examples that are coming up for you guys.
Thank you, Hannah. So right before we go into Cassandra's content, we have one final poll. And this is something Cassandra was actually wondering herself, whether your organization has specific people dedicated to an ABM strategy or an ABM content strategy, or whether it's a shared responsibility for the whole team. So if you can go ahead and fill out the poll, those of you who wandered to your inbox, come back and fill out the poll with us here. And we'll see. It looks like a lot of people have a shared responsibility, or some people out there aren't doing ABM, which means you lied on the first poll, but this is great. So it looks like, and this is what we are kind of hearing in our networks too, that a lot of people ABM, and as it should, does span across kind of everyone's responsibility, because like Hannah said, you can't do ABM in a silo. So closing the results, we'll share them up here really quick. So everyone can get a glance at those, and then I'm going to pass it off to Cassandra here, who is going to give us some really clear, concrete examples of the ABM content work that they've been doing at Influitive. So Cassandra, you should have control now.
Thank you, Kate. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see those poll results. It's very similar at Influitive. My colleague Truman, who's our Director of Customer and Advocate Marketing, he owns the ABM number that we report to our executive team, but all of us really contribute to making these ABM campaigns happen, bringing them to life. And because they do span so many different parts of the funnel, across so many different types of programs, with so many different types of content, you know, if someone was doing it alone, I would be really concerned about the mental well-being of that person, because I think it would be really overwhelming. So my goal today is to share with you some examples of content and campaigns that we run at different stages of the funnel, different stages of the buying process, to hopefully inspire you to think outside the first name box, or to think outside the company logo when you're actually putting your ABM campaigns together. We've had a lot of fun experimenting with account-based marketing at Influitive, and if you're not familiar with us, we make an advocate marketing platform. We sell directly to CMOs and heads of marketing, and our users of our product are typically community managers or customer marketers, customer reference managers, those types of people. So we focus our ABM efforts specifically on CMOs. A lot of the time, like many C-level executives, they can be pretty tough to reach with traditional marketing messages, and you know, a lot of traditional demand gen techniques are just not giving us the returns that we want. And for me as a content marketer, my biggest pet peeve is when, you know, I produce what we think is great content, really helpful for our audience, really well researched in terms of understanding what our personas really want, what they need to make good buying decisions to help them get better at their jobs, and then that content doesn't really get used properly. So ABM can be a really powerful way for me to sort of feel like, hey, this content's being used in a meaningful way, even if a million people aren't looking at it, the best possible people are looking at it. So that's what I'll get started with. Oops. So just a little bit of a warning here before I really get started into the examples. I will say, as a content marketer, I'm not going to be talking about the data or the operations work that went into these campaigns and this content beforehand. There are a lot of really talented data people on our team who have researched who are the best people we should talk to, is their contact information up to date, are the team members up to date at those companies. You can't just sell to a logo. There are real people behind the scenes there making these decisions, and you have to appeal to that lineup on an individual personal level. And same with the actual deliverability of all those things. So there's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff that goes into it before any of this content is actually created. So I just wanted to give a bit of a disclaimer there. And also, we're still learning. We've been running what we call small ball experiments over the last year to kind of try out a few different styles of account-based marketing campaigns and content to see what works and what doesn't. And so I'm going to share some of the most successful things with you. Some of them are very new. We're literally just running them right now, so I don't have results for everything, but I will share honest results with you where I can. And the reason that we've invested so much into account-based marketing is, again, partly because of sort of waning demand gen results in other areas, but also because it's a lot more human. And as you can see here, our marketing stack, a lot of people are really obsessed with their stack, is we have all this technology, but we also think of it as a very human thing. All of the technology should enable us to connect with the human beings on the other side of the screen or the event or whatever it is we are using as a channel to engage with our customers and potential customers. So we use platforms like Integrate and Vidyard and Marketo, Hootsuite, even our own platform, to reach our customers and potential customers at all stages of the buying process. Our account-based marketing stack is our marketing stack, as you saw with John's slide. There's a lot of technology that can power it. Don't get overwhelmed. I would say start with what you have and then build out any specialty requirements as needed. For example, if you like what Uberflip was doing there with those custom streams, that could be a really unique way to do that. Or you might find a way to do it on your own if you're not able to bring in a piece of technology like Uberflip. So we haven't acquired a ton of account-based marketing specific technology. We really started out with, okay, what do we have and what can we use to achieve these goals and run these experiments? And so our team kind of has three guiding philosophies, and the first one is that we need to be authentic in everything that we do. We sell directly to marketers, which, as I'm sure all of you know as marketers, that you can kind of smell BS from a mile away, and it's really easy to understand when a company is not being authentic. The emails that Kate showed, it makes you look so bad, and it doesn't allow you to connect with those human beings. And a lot of analysts are coming out now and saying how companies just need to really be authentic, and if you're not, you're going to be exposed, and people aren't going to love your brand as a result. There are so many voices out there to sort of really stand out. You have to deliver something in a truly authentic way. So we try to do that as much as possible. We also try to humanize our brand and our customers' brands as much as possible. So instead of having NASCAR logo slides, we use our customers' faces everywhere. We use their customers' faces everywhere because they use our platform to engage with their customers. So instead of saying, we're working with Blackbaud, Arrowhive, and NetBase, we say we're working with Michael, Jenny, and Kevin. They're real people who had to make these decisions, and these are the really amazing things that they've been able to achieve alongside their advocates. So I think once you start thinking in that respect, these are real people, they have jobs, they have families, they have goals and ambitions. That's when you can really start to get into understanding the psychology of what content and what campaigns might reach someone with your ABM strategy. Finally, I would say our third guiding philosophy is don't be boring. When you're selling to marketers, you can't just do the same old, same old. So we try to light the traditional marketing norms on fire as much as possible. This is a screen cap from a video we used to promote our conference, and this is Buck, the camp counselor, and he's igniting your revenue there. So we try to just be as silly and funny as much as we can. I know that's not possible with every brand, but you'll see in some of these examples that we try to get there as much as we can. So that gives you a bit of context to set up the examples that we've done, and I can walk into a few of those. Just a quick note, yes, I'm a content marketer, but I didn't produce all of this content myself necessarily. Every single thing here is technically content, but I didn't write it all myself. I didn't necessarily design it all myself, so I'm not going to take credit for it. There are tons of other amazing people on our team at Influitive that are doing this stuff, and we've had a really great time working together on all of these examples. So one of the first ways that we use ABM at Influitive was stand out at big events that we're sponsoring. You can spend a huge proportion of your marketing budget on event sponsorships, and sometimes you're left wondering, like, what am I actually getting out of this? So our very first ABM campaign was called the Dreamforce Most Wanted campaign at Dreamforce 2015, one of the most expensive conferences that you can sponsor as a technology company, I think. And so we were looking for ways, there are literally tens or hundreds of thousands of people at Dreamforce that could walk by your booth, but how are we going to get those CMOs, those VPs of marketing, how are we going to get their attention, especially when they're working all of their own booths as well. So we created a list of most wanted marketers. Those were our target accounts, and we put them up on our website. We distributed posters. We posted them on social media. We handed out cards at the event, and we asked other people to turn in these most wanted marketers by bringing them to our booth, and they could get a bounty of $100 cash for themselves and the most wanted marketer if they deliver that marketer to our booth. So we had a lot of really fun artwork, obviously, but we also used their actual faces. We pulled all of their headshots from LinkedIn, put funny hats on them, and turned them into most wanted. As you can see, the response was, kind of hilarious. We got these CMOs, VPs of marketing, who are typically pretty hard to engage, to actually respond to us on Twitter and say, this is really cool, this is hilarious, and that was sort of a big win for us. Even though we're not getting thousands of people responding, that's not the goal, right? We just want a handful of these people to take notice of us and say, oh, there's this huge event, and Influitive is really standing out above the rest. So we thought it was pretty successful. We only paid out a couple actual bounties at the event. So from a cost perspective, aside from the Dreamforce sponsorship, of course, it wasn't huge. We targeted 150 accounts, and we ended up influencing 23 opportunities, closing 4 deals, and I think, through the campaign, we engaged about 50 accounts. So not bad for our first attempt at this. It was really fun as well, and people still talk about it. So overall, we were really happy with how that turned out. The next one I'll talk about is a personalized video. I feel like Vidyard's getting a lot of shout outs in this webinar, but fellow Canadian company along with Uberflip. So we have to rep each other every once in a while. So to promote our conference, ABM, we wanted to come up with a clever way to make it stand out in the sea of other marketing conferences that happen every single year. And we decided that a personalized video would be the way to go about that. Vidyard had just launched their personalized video capabilities, and we had just become a customer. So they, working with our agency, Sparksite, we produced a short, 30-second video and had an opportunity to sort of personalize the stitching on this sash. It was basically Camp Counselor Buck is inviting the viewer to come to AdvoCamp and collect their sash so they can start adding badges to it, learning about customer experience, engagement, and advocacy. And so people, we selected a key number of accounts, and we sent them these videos where the sash and the final slide were personalized. It's really, really basic, but we had a pretty good response to that as well. As you can see, our previous promotions were sort of what you would expect, like very low open and click-through rate in particular. The personalized video campaign, the results were anywhere from 2 to 8 times better than the previous promotions we had run for this conference. So we were really, really happy with how it turned out, and we had a lot of people replying and being like, well, this is amazing, this seems very magical. Nobody really knew about personalized video at the time. So it was a great response, and it caught everyone's attention. As a result, we also tripled AdvoCamp's attendance from the previous year. So for us, for that, it was a little bit harder to attribute exact revenue directly back to the video, but we felt it was a pretty successful ABM campaign as well. And then following that, we ran an actual ABM campaign to sort of key accounts that attended our conference, and we really wanted to keep the momentum going after all the excitement they experienced there. So we sent them a lot of our existing content that was targeted toward them. So, you can see here there's like a marketing advocates book there, and they sell to marketers as well. So we sent them information all around their customer base and how to engage them in an advocate marketing program. We also literally printed out tweets that they had shared pictures, sort of like your care package after you come home from camp. And people really loved that. They were very delighted. and it really just kept the excitement levels high after a really great event. Often you don't really know where to go after that, and the conversations kind of die down. So this was a way to keep it going. Obviously, this was hugely manual. We had a team of summer interns who were kind of taking this on, mailing all this stuff to people, writing personalized notes, printing out pictures. We still struggle, to be honest, with how to personalize content at scale, because when you're doing one-to-one like this, there's really no way to scale it at this point. One way that we have found you can scale a little bit more is through sort of really intense personalization. So we leverage third-party content like this G2 crowd grid for Industry X. This one is just project management, but we pulled a bunch of these, and we personalized all of this different data. This is where our data experts come in, so that we could deliver, instead of just hi first name, like we noticed you don't have as many reviews as you might like on G2 Crowd, you should use Influitive. We actually gave them all of their data back and compared them to their competitors in a hugely customized way. So you can see all the different fields here that we sent them. And this kind of thing is really powerful because you kind of feel like you're missing out. You're not getting as many reviews as your competitors. You can see the proof there. They would have the report attached as well as all this great data. So it was just it was a way to take personalization to the next level, and again, think beyond the first name or company name box there. We also sent some videos to people, sort of shaming them for not being as high up in the Gartner Peer Insights grids that were released as well. So we said, it's great that you're here, but you could be up and to the right even more. And our VP of Marketing, Jim, actually recorded a personalized video that we tweeted at these target accounts, basically saying, you could be doing a lot more, you could be doing better here, let us help you. Again, very manual. This is really only great for one SKU, but for us, it was very influential in a lot of these sort of like middle stage deals, giving them FOMO along the way so that, they can really understand what they're missing out on. Finally, a few more examples. So Hannah talked about understanding, what objections are salespeople facing in the buying process, and how can you actually help that with account-based marketing content. So we developed content around 4 key objections that our buyers had. We created a website, some landing pages, printable cards that we mailed out to people, and we also did a lot of ads that would follow people around in a very creepy, stalking way, retargeting ads. Sort of, they got pretty close to buying, but then they didn't for one of these reasons. So how can we address those fears? We mailed them these cards along with a Forrester report just showing that what we're offering is something that is recommended, and these are some of the ways they can overcome these objections in the buying process. This was actually a 24-hour, we called it a ship it day project, and it took a little bit longer than 24 hours. It took about 36 hours, but we all came together as a team and whipped up this campaign so that we could send it out and really help the sales team with some of those later stage deals that were getting stuck due to some of these objections. I just have a couple more examples, so bear with me. Hopefully these are helpful for you. Everyone knows in B2B about reference calls. Everyone has to do them every once in a while. But increasingly, these reference calls are being taken to social media, and we've actually started encouraging our prospects to go on Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever and say, hey, is anyone using Influitive? What do you think of them? Would you recommend them? And then we ask our customers to go and actually, vouch for us. And in some cases, like you can see the top tweet here, our customer actually shared the case study that we wrote about them. So there's no new content here, but a highly relevant peer shared existing content over social, and it's a really great way to just fill the buying process with social proof and target those very late stage deals with, basically references, and then this person could easily follow up with any of these customers and get a deeper dive into what's going on. We've also done this on a very one-to-one way where our advocates have written sort of lengthy emails or little case study emails and sent it directly to the prospect to help them understand the success they've achieved. And that way it's not like a super polished corporate case study. It's more authentic, more directly from one of their peers. Finally, I'll say once someone becomes a customer, you shouldn't stop ABMing. Your customers they could always spend more, they could always become more engaged, and there's always a risk that they could go somewhere else. So for us, post-sale marketing is one of the, the most important areas. Obviously, as an advocate marketing company, we're in the business of creating advocates among our customers. And for people who aren't super advocates yet, we want to turn them into advocates so that they can help us grow our business at the same time. So these are a couple of examples of account-based marketing campaigns that we run to our customers. So on the left is a little infographic that we made. We actually printed them. You can see the sort of like bleed markings there. We printed them and mailed them directly to the executive, the CMO, or the VP of marketing on the account. We created a bunch of these as it was nearing renewal time, just to say, hey, in case you weren't aware, here's what your advocate marketer has been up to. You're one of our top performing communities, and your advocates love it, and these are some of the amazing results that you're getting, just to make sure that they were really bought into it, and the renewal would be more guaranteed, and they might actually upsell as a result. One of our huge sort of like turn red flags is that the executive isn't engaged in the account. We had a lot of really great responses on a one-to-one basis of the executive coming back and saying, oh, I didn't know all of this. Thank you so much for sharing it with me. I really understand now better the value that you guys bring to us. And finally, even just sending little perks, little prizes. One of our newer customers, Nick, who's a total rock star, he's already presenting on his success for us, but he's a really curious guy. He's interested in learning more about the space, so we sent him Jonah Berger's brand new book, Invisible Influence, with a note just saying thanks for being such an awesome customer, and he tweeted that, which is awesome for us. So those are just some examples of the things that we're doing. Hopefully, again, it inspired you to think outside the first name box and get a little bit more personal, understand the psychology of the people you're trying to reach, and get creative, because I think anyone can do this. It's just a matter of trial and error and seeing what works for you.
Thanks, Cassandra. That was some really, really actionable, really cool stuff. I know I got a lot of new ideas out of it myself, and I think it was very helpful to see some of the results that you shared as well. So we appreciate that. Thank you for doing that. Charlie is going to quickly cover a little bit about measurement of ABM content effectiveness. And just quickly before he goes into that, if we do run out of time for Q&A, which it looks like we might, of course, you guys can all find us on Twitter, shoot any questions that way, or just send them to me or marketing at Integrate, and we'll make sure that they get routed to the correct presenter to respond to. So Charlie, go ahead and dive right into measurement.
Yeah, great. Because well, first of all, I want to thank Cassandra and Hannah on talking about some really great points in terms of the content. I think just looking through those, it's even more critical to create a very tight target account list, because just looking at the amount of effort that goes into all the content creation, all the great examples, like if you don't have your ABM list tight, like it's going to be a waste of time. So I also wanted to say that I really enjoy the Influitive example at Dreamforce. Hats off, pun intended, to Influitive. I think my old boss was on that campaign, and we never let him live them back. We never let him live it down. Like I think we even changed his profile picture one day with his Wild West theme campaign. But I want to talk about thanks for sticking around to the end. I got 5 minutes, but I want to make it it's going to be worth your while. So how do you measure? Measurement was the number 2 area of focus for content marketing in the poll we did earlier this webinar. So how do you measure content? Right. First of all, I mean, content, on paper is technically free because it's just time. It doesn't, unless you're spending it with third-party resource, it's $0. But good content, as we all know, is not free. Good content actually takes a lot of time and effort that are not written down on paper, or not directly attributed to content. So make sure you don't put $0 next to content, because otherwise, your boss is going to think that you're a machine and be able to create infinite amounts of content. But good content is definitely very valuable. So how do you measure content? And I'll show you kind of a slide, on the next one, how we do it internally. But you should measure content against 4 areas. 1, versus other channels, right? So if content's not free, then how does it stack up versus other channels? And what's the effectiveness of it? And then the other way to measure content is versus itself. So how effective, what are the different content types? If you're running campaigns and you have different content, like how does your internal content stack up against itself? How do they measure like all the content that you're creating that's what we call demand gen net fishing? How does those content types compare and contrast versus the more narrowly focused target account content that you're doing for your tier 1 and tier 2 accounts? And finally, what are your content strengths and weaknesses by buying stage? Like what types of content and what themes resonate best based off of your tofu, mofu, and bottom of the funnel content. So this is one slide. This is how we do it internally. So we use this dashboard. First of all, it's important to kind of measure, like on number 1, we measure our content against different target account lists. So this particular list is all of our target accounts, but we also have tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 accounts. So it's important to measure it against the different lists. The time period is also important. So in number 2, this particular one is showing this year. On number 3, it's important to measure where the account is in the funnel. So are they a current opportunity? Are they a customer already? Are they meeting? Do we have a meeting scheduled with them? So segment your accounts based off of funnel track. And then number 4, it's important to understand how many of your target accounts you're getting in front of with your content. So on this, you can see our top 2 pieces of content are the clear and complete guide to account-based marketing and the clear and complete guide to account-based sales development. And respectively, 61% of our target accounts have downloaded that piece of content. So that's awesome. And the people is important too, because the clear and complete guide to ABM has 5,000 downloads this year, but 447 of them were inside of our target accounts, tier 1 through 3. So that's pretty cool to see. And then finally, number 6, it's important to measure content versus other channel types. So events. So I guess marketers at our target accounts love to read content and they like to go to parties based off of this report. But it's important to see kind of what other channels are your core buyers at your key accounts are engaging with. So this is how we kind of measure it internally. And I think we have 1 more minute left for Q&A. Kate, I don't know if we have time for this, but I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, Charlie. I think at this point in time, there's not really enough time left for Q&A, but as you can see on the screen, here is everyone's Twitter handles. Go ahead and any specific questions you have for everyone, send them over. Remember to use that ABM content hashtag so the rest of us can see them. And I'm sure that we'll all be happy to answer them via Twitter, or again, you can go ahead and send those questions to marketing@integrate.com. We'll monitor that. And anything that's gotten entered into the question pane, I will pull out of there and make an effort to reach out as well with those answers, depending on who the questions are for. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I'll leave this slide up as we sign off here. Just a couple of tweetable takeaways, some key points from all the presenters to remember, making it easy for you to share something on Twitter. So feel free to do that as well. And again, thank you, everyone, for being in our audience today. And we look forward to interacting with you in the future. And thank you to the presenters. Bye, everyone.